Hello everyone and welcome to Shell Point Today for Wednesday, February 24th. I'm Dan Philgreen. On today's show, we'll show you more of our recent interview with Bro and Dede Darcy, who spent 2 nights at Great Britain's famed Windsor Castle as special guests. Ray Boyce will give us another teaser on the Salute to Shakespeare Academy classes. And Dotty Morrison will introduce us to a local Florida photographer whose works are being featured at the photo studio. But first, don't forget about tomorrow's golf croquet meeting. Come and learn about this exciting game and meet other Shell Point friends who enjoy it. Light refreshments will be served at the Osprey Room at 9:15 tomorrow morning to talk about golf croquet. Also, tomorrow is the Medical Breakthroughs and Discovery Seminar at the Village Church. With the gorgeous weather we often have here in Florida, spending time outdoors is usually at the top of our to-do lists. But one thing we must be mindful of is avoiding too much exposure to the harmful rays of the sun. Melanoma skin cancer is of great concern, and that's why tomorrow's Medical Breakthroughs and Discovery Seminar is one you don't want to miss. Dr. Ryan Sullivan, oncologist at Massachusetts General Hospital, will discuss the latest studies and treatments for melanoma. Light refreshments will follow the presentation at the Village Church, which begins at 2:15 p.m. And finally, beginning tomorrow, there will be a 2-day watercolor workshop for beginners and advanced watercolorists in the art studio on the island. The class runs from 1:30 to 3 p.m. Thursday and Friday. For more information and to enroll, call Neil Glasser at 437-3622. No doubt you've passed by the big construction site northwest of the estuary in recent weeks to see the buzz of progress. This beautiful structure is starting to take shape, and it soon will be the new home of the Shell Point Golf Clubhouse. But this massive building has so much more potential, and you'll get to hear all about it this Friday. Shell Point's Chief Operating Officer, Scott Moore, along with Al Slickers, Director of Hospitality, and Bob Southern of Project Development, will provide construction updates and an outline of all the services that will be provided at the new Shell Point Clubhouse. To get all the latest updates, make sure to be at the Village Church at 10:15 this Friday. Last week, we presented a story about residents Bro and Dede Darcy and their recent trip to Windsor Castle in Great Britain. But it was more than just a trip to see how royalty lives. They were actually guests of the governor of the castle for a 2-night stay. It was an up-close and personal experience they will never forget. In fact, there was so much information that we wanted to return on today's show to hear more about their fabulous experiences amid these accommodations, worthy of a queen.
In '01, we were both living in Sanibel, and our next door neighbor told us he had a couple coming to stay in his house for a week, and they were from England. Well, we went out every day with them and really had a good time and became pretty close to them. He said, you know, my husband is retired, and he has been appointed the governor of Windsor Castle. That's a fantastic honor to be one of those, and it's a 5-year thing. Why don't you come visit us? And we said, yeah, we will do that one. And so we made arrangements to go visit them this past September. Everything is roped off that you're going to see, even out in the courtyard where the military are, where they do the changing of the guard. And the visitors are behind some barriers way off. We ignored all of that. We walked wherever we want. If there was a barrier chain, he picked it up and undid it. And we came in, and Dede had to dodge one of the guards at the changing.
Mm-hmm. Nicola took us right to where it's happening. And of course I was there taking all these pictures and things like that, and there's a certain routine that they have to walk, a pattern. And I was taking pictures, and all of a sudden I realized, well, he's walking right towards me, and he was not going to change his path. So I quickly got out of the way. So we got there a day, had dinner, 2 nights, and then the second night, we had to leave the second night because there was an investiture on Thursday. And if you don't know what an investiture is, which we didn't really know, that's when the Queen or someone from the royal family stands and presents the Order of the British Empire, OBE. And so that is more of, that's when someone becomes a sir or a lady. And that is given to someone in the distinguished, more of the arts, charity, the social. It's not a military honor. It's more of a doing good for the empire. So this investiture was going to have Prince William. And he said, Prince William is very chatty, so we have no idea how long this ceremony is going to take. And that's why we needed to vacate the grounds, because they were having all of these people come in. And it is done in St. George's Chapel.
But when we finally left, we toured. We got a driver and we toured for 3 or 4 days. And the people we met a lot of people, but we never found anyone who even knew somebody who'd spent a night in the castle.
The most impressive thing, I mean, when we first got in there, and Nicola was in the car with us, and she drove us up to their door, and it has on the brass plate, Governor. Just seeing this Norman gate and these 2 great big huge Norman towers that again were built in 1200, it was just, we got to thinking, we kind of rolled our eyes with each other and thought, well, what are we to expect? So that's impressive. And then of course the iconic round tower. The second night we were there, we went to Evensong in St. George's Chapel. When we got in there, it's a long 1 aisle room, and then there's one on each side. There's 1 bank of chairs, and then there's another, and then there's another. Well, the Knights of the Garter were established in, I think it was the 1200s. It was by Edward III. And there are only 26 Knights of the Garter ever at any one time. So each of these very narrow chairs at the very back row is assigned to a Knight of the Garter. And each time a new knight comes in, and it's only by death that they can come in, they have to choose their own banner, their own logo, everything. So where James and Nicola have reserved seats, we sat right next to them. And when we walked in, all the way up to the ceiling are these little brass plates of who has sat in this particular chair for all of these years. The whole service, Evensong service, was my most memorable moment because it was just so glorious. So it was just amazing. And when you walked in to this aisle, you walked over where Henry VIII is buried. There are 10 monarchs buried at St. George's Chapel and Jane Seymour, and over the years. That is the Queen's favorite residence because when she's working, she has to be in London. But when
she was not there when we were there?
No, she was at Balmoral. And when she's working on the weekends, she comes to Windsor because that's her favorite castle. And she spent a lot of time with her sister and her parents there. So, and we have a picture of where she lives. And then we have, with us standing in front of it with James and Nicola. So we have a picture of that. And it's just, she rides almost every day when she's there. And the area where she rides is only private. You have to be a royal or invited to go there.
It's a different place.
The years that all of this has been going on was another thing that it just boggles your mind, being Americans where, 200 years old is old. This is the picture of the Norman Gate and Norman Tower. And this is, the left-hand tower is where we stayed. The right-hand tower was James and Nicholas. And then this breezeway, the connecting part of the building, is called the Fortescue Room. And the reason it's called the Fortescue Room is that during the Civil War, which is when the parliamentarians or Cromwell's forces were battling King Charles I royalists, there was an Edmund Fortescue was held prisoner here for a little about a year or so, and he got bored. So he took a knife or something and he carved in the stone wall of this room Edmund Fortescue, 1642, Vive le Roi. And that is behind a piece of plexiglass. It's on the lintel of a fireplace. It's behind a piece of plexiglass. But this window is the window where James, when he's at his desk, looks out. And behind the window, there's a piece of glass, but you can see where the the big iron gate would come down to keep out the enemy, and this is the slit, and these round holes are where they would throw boiling oil or human waste, anything to deter an attack. And you can see that, I mean, James just looks right out. He looks over that. This part of the tower is also part of his office, and the tiles, again, date back to like 1270. And I said, do you want us to take our shoes off? She says, no, that's all right. You just, you're here.
Well, I got more of an understanding of the royalty, which I had no idea about when I went there, other than what I'd probably seen in movies. And everybody around there was so nice. They really were. Nobody was big shot, haughty, and I would like to go back.
They all have great sense of humor. They all know everybody. They are just, again, ordinary is not the right word, but they're just extraordinarily ordinary. How's that? And the name of my little book was An Undreamt Dream Comes True, because it was like a dream.
And now it's time for another Academy Class teaser from Ray Boyce on the Salute to Shakespeare series. This one is happening this Friday, and it's about romance plays.
Hi, I'm Terry Kolath. I'm here with Ray Boyce of Rosemont. We're talking about the next installment in Salute to Shakespeare 2016 that Ray's providing for us, looking at a play every 2 weeks. This time we're going to have one of the romance plays, Cymbeline. Tell us a little bit about this, Ray.
Well, Cymbeline is an example of the plays written in his latter years. Some people think they're wonderful examples of writing. Some people question the writing. Some people don't. They're a mixture of tragedy and comedy, and I think they present interesting plots to be followed by audiences and are very enjoyable. I look forward to reviewing it with everybody.
And we look forward to being there with Ray. Don't forget to sign up at either service desk.
Dotty Morrison of the Photo Club is standing by with another Gallery Glimpses segment. This time she's introducing us to local photographer John Hutson, who is featuring his works of scenery and wildlife at the photo gallery.
Hi, I'm Dotty Morrison. Welcome to the Photo Gallery and Studio, where I'm here for another segment of Gallery Glimpses. Come on in. I want to introduce you to our guest artist, John Hutson. Hi, John.
Hello.
Thanks for coming. Why don't you have a seat?
Thank you.
So, John, where do you live?
I live in LaBelle, Florida.
All right. And do you have your photos hanging in a gallery there?
We have, Arts of the Inland has a gallery, an art gallery, and I have, it's been open since April, and I've exhibited my photos there consistently since that time.
Aside from the gallery in LaBelle, do you exhibit anywhere else?
I have occasionally put photos at Punta Gorda, the Visual Arts Center, Naples Arts Center, the Art Council of Southwest Florida, which is in Estero.
Right.
And that's it, I guess.
All right. Well, we're so glad that you found us on the internet through the Alliance for the Arts and saw our invitation, because we really like to have the opportunity to have people who aren't Shell Point residents exhibit here. We are proud of the fact that we have this wonderful gallery, and this way Shell Point residents and visitors can see your work without going all the way to LaBelle. It's great. So tell me, how long? Yeah. How long have you been a photographer?
I dabbled with it years and years ago, and probably didn't get too serious about it until 2006 after I retired.
Okay.
And I've been doing it pretty much as a hobby ever since.
I see. And you sell your photography?
I do. I go to different arts and craft shows.
Right. Yeah. Well, I've noticed in looking at your pictures, and we're just going to give a glimpse today, that your work ranges from very realistic to a very unique style that I really appreciate. So we want to talk about some of your pictures. And the first one I want to talk about is this picture. I see water and I see rocks. What am I looking at here?
This is Crater Lake in Oregon, in central part of Oregon, state of Oregon. This is an old tree that I've been there 3 or 4 times, and each time the tree loses a few limbs. So it's interesting to see how that is deteriorating. But it's a very, very gorgeous lake. The water is really crystal clear and it's deep blue.
Wow. So this is one of your more realistic pictures. I want to talk about a picture that I noticed of pelicans, but you've done something very unique to them. So John, I saw this picture of pelicans and cormorants. I'm a birder, so I always notice birds. And it's very realistic, maybe taking it ding, dig, darling.
Exactly.
Okay. And then I saw this one. What have you done to the pelicans?
Well, in Photoshop, I use Photoshop a lot on some of the ones that you can tell that they've been altered. In Photoshop, there's a couple of settings that you can click on and get different effects. It's sort of a posterization effect.
Yes.
And there's a lot of opportunities to make that different colors and work with it.
I love what it's done to the blues. The texture of the water is amazing. There's just something about it that makes me look at the birds in a different way.
Yeah, it's almost like a neon effect.
Exactly, exactly. All right, and then I want to come to the big one at the end of the gallery back here. John, I wanted to ask you about this. It almost looks like a painting to me. It's just such beautiful color and texture. Tell me about this picture.
Well, this was just, I think they're called African lilies, in somebody's garden that I took a picture of, and duplicated the original picture and used a chrome effect in Photoshop and then blended the two together to get kind of a painterly effect.
It almost feels like it's done on glass with water. It feels like I should be able to touch it and there's water there. That's incredible. Well, I'm so glad that your work is here, and I know that our residents are going to want to come. We've only given you a glimpse. He has a lot of pictures here. He told me about boats that he's taking pictures of. He's taken pictures of other landscapes, and you'll want to come down and see. We are open Tuesdays and Thursdays from 10 to noon, and we're in the tunnel behind the stamp room, and we would love to have you come down sometime between now and the end of March and see John's work. And thank you so much for coming.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
And now it's time to take a look at today's happenings, Academy news, menus, and Village Church connections.
Hello and happy Wednesday. This is the happening segment of Shell Point TV. I'm Caitlin Vanscoy.
And I'm Bev Chandley.
And we're going to give you all of Wednesday's activities. We start at 7:45 with men's Bible study in the Osprey Room. And pickleball is at 8 o'clock at the game courts. Also at 8, men's match play tennis will be at the Woodlands tennis courts. At 8:45, Lily & Company Jewelers will be here for their weekly service in the Resident Activity Center. 9 o'clock's the time for Jurassic Travel to be here in the Egret Room. Also at 9, Watercolor Group with Phil Hilton will be in the Art Studio in the Island Tunnel. The Card Making and Scrapbooking Group will be at 9:15 in the Tarpon Room. And the Ladies' Bible Study will gather in the Osprey Room at 10 o'clock. Also at 10, men's match play tennis will be at the Woodlands tennis courts. The Model Yacht Sailing Club will be meeting at the Commons Lake at the Woodlands at 10:15. And our last morning activity is 11:30, Agility and Flexibility in the Health Club. Here's Bev to tell you all about our afternoon.
Thank you, Caitlin. At 12:45, we have a Health Connections class, Advanced Senior Strength. That's in the Health Club on the island. And we also have chess in the Library Lounge on the island at 1 o'clock. At 1:15, we have the Hearing Enrichment Group. That's in the Manatee Room down by the Legacy. And at 1:30 until 3:30, we have model train room tours and viewing. At 1:45, we have a Health Connections class, Balance and Mobility for Beginners. That's in the Health Club on the island. And at 2:30, there's a jazz concert. Jazz and Stuff will be playing in the Grand Cypress Room at the Woodlands. Head on down. It's free. At 3 o'clock, we have a Health Connections class, Pilates Stretch. That's in the Health Club. And indoor bocce will be in the Health Club at 4:30. Now at 5 o'clock, the singles table at the Crystal Dining Room will be ready for you if you're interested. And the church choir rehearsal will be at the Village Church at 5:45. At 7:15, we have our last activity, and this is Prayer and Praise at the Village Church. Well, thank you for joining us today, and we will see you here tomorrow.
Hello, I'm Terry Kolath with your Academy information for Wednesday. At 9 o'clock, our knitting class begins for those who have signed up. It's in the Sable Room of the Woodlands. And at 10:15, the Google workshops take place in the Technology Teaching Center of the island, again, for those who have registered. At 1 o'clock, we have an intermediate bridge class continuing in the game room of the Woodlands. I'd like to tell you what's coming up tomorrow. It's Academy on the Go, number 4, and this is our educational field trip to the Sanibel Historical Village and Museum. Also, our iPhone Basics with Bruce Findlay, Basic Apps. And the Suez Canal, St. Catherine's Monastery, and Mount Sinai will be presented by Professor Adrian Kerr.
Menus for Wednesday. In the Crystal Room, the Crystal Platter is sweet and sour pork with fried rice and snap peas. For dinner, they are featuring Scandinavian Night for $21.95. The soup of the day is pasta fazool. In the Island Cafe for lunch, the special is a turkey Cobb salad wrap with chips for $7.75. The dinner special is fried shrimp for $8.75. Dinner specials in the Palm Grill are pork schnitzel for $14.95 or grilled swordfish for $18.95. All menus are available 24 hours a day at www.shellpoint.net.
Welcome to Village Church Connections. I'm David Pavey. Some years ago, when my wife Nancy and I were serving God in Europe, we would often drive long distances in the course of our ministry. As we traveled, we would frequently invest the time listening to sermons by the hour. One that made an impression on me was by Pastor Ernie Baxter of Vancouver in British Columbia. It was entitled Eagle Christians, and he told a story that touched my heart. Now, I stumbled across this story again recently, and it challenged me once again. So let me recount it for you, and I'll tell it in the first person as if I'm Baxter himself. I'm eternally indebted to my maternal grandmother. In my study at home, there's one picture on the wall, only one. And if you walk into my study, you'll see straight ahead of you, in a simple frame, a gray-haired woman who was to me God's agent. As a boy, I came a little early for young parents to want to be bothered with me. And they wanted to have a good time, so Grandma was my babysitter. Right from early days, I remember Grandma. I recall the little cottage with a picket fence and all the Saturday mornings when I would go there. I remember all those gorgeous things that would come out of that great stove oven. Homemade buns, homemade bread, homemade cakes, not food you picked off a shelf. And then came those 3 or 4 years of awful rebellion when I was in my teens. I drifted away from the Lord. My father thought I was no good, and with reason. My mother grieved over me, but it was Grandma who helped me come back to God. She had come to live with us by then, and as I would come home, sometimes at 3 or 4 in the morning, I would see the light under her door, and I heard my name repeated quietly, and I knew what she was doing. She was on her knees praying for me. When God got hold of my life and I went into the ministry, Grandma came out to Vancouver to be near me. When I began to preach, Grandma would always be there, sitting about 4 rows from the front with a banana smile from ear to ear on her face, knowing that she had invested several hours of prayer already in that sermon. I'm not sure she ever heard a thing I said. She just sat there and beamed. It was almost as if she was saying quietly, "We did it, Lord, didn't we?" Oh, I was a great preacher. I knew my homiletics and my hermeneutics. I knew how to put a sermon together with an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. Now, Grandma prayed for me 4 hours per day, and that was nice of her, but I really didn't need it. I'd visit Grandma several times per week. I loved to visit her, and she'd have little slices of pineapple for me. But one day I went to visit her and she said, "I think I'm going home." I said, "But Grandma, you are home." "No," she said, "I'm going home to heaven." I said, "Grandma, you can't do that." She said, "I am. I've given notice from my room." It was almost as if she and the Lord had arranged it. And I think they had. "No, Ern," she said, "no. I'm going back to the prairies to say goodbye to the children. And then I'm going home." And sure enough, she went back to the prairies. She wrote all her Christmas cards, got into bed, and called the preacher in. He read her favorite psalm to her, but she was already 2 verses ahead of him by memory, which is a bit embarrassing after all. And when she had attended to everything, like the patriarch of old, she drew her feet up into her bed, breathed her last, and went home. I went to the funeral and then returned to Vancouver. On Sunday morning, I stood up in my pulpit, opened my Bible and my sermon notes, and I started to preach, but nothing came out. I cleared my throat and started again, but nothing would come out. And I said to myself, "There's something wrong." And the Lord said, "You bet there's something wrong." And I said, "Oh God, you mean?" And he said, "That's what I mean." In front of my congregation, I put my head on the pulpit and I began to weep. And I said, "Oh Lord, I've been a wicked, stupid, blind boy." Then I told him, "She's gone. And this morning I'm as empty as a barrel." Grandma's hours of prayer had been sustaining me, and I had been too proud to know it. And I said, "Oh God, forgive me." There was one old colored sister in my church. I'll never forget it. While I was still weeping in humiliation before my congregation, she stood up, full of years, and she said, "Pastor, I'll be your grandma." Now, in those days, I was traveling around the world. I'd preach on a Sunday morning and tell them I had to leave quickly to catch a plane. But that old sister would be outside my vestry door. I would come out with my briefcase, and she'd take me to her ample bosom, and she'd pull my head against her old black gray hair, and she'd nuzzle me against her cheek, and she'd say, "My son, y'all remember, wherever you're going, and I don't know where you're going, but I know you're going, and you remember that back home here you got a grandma." I want you to know, I've got so many grandmas across the country now, you couldn't count them. I keep supplied with grandmas. I've got grandmas in every town. I was in one place recently, and a little 15-year-old girl came up to me when I told this story, and she said, "This may sound rather strange, but would it be all right if I was your grandma?" I said, "You're the youngest one I ever had, but I'll take you." So that's the end of the story. But here's a question for you. Are you a grandma for someone today? Would anyone notice if you stopped praying for them? Thank you for tuning in to Village Church Connections.
And that will just about do it for today's edition of Shell Point Today for Wednesday, February 23rd. On tomorrow's program, we will hear from Professor Adrian Kerr about his class on Pakistan and Afghanistan. And Paul Neighbors will tell us about some new computer clinics that are available for residents. Until then, I'm Dan Philgreen, thanking you for taking the time to spend it with us today. And we'll see you again tomorrow.